Welcome everybody to the Destiny Dugout. I'm your host Cruz, member of the 3-time World's First Team from Elysium, and this is what we've got going on this episode. Check out myself and Vandal's socials, which are in the description box below. Thank you on a personal level for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoy listening, and let us know what you think in the comment section. Now without further ado, let's get this thing started. Welcome back to episode 4 of the Destiny Dugout. Woohoo!
We
did miss a week.
Unfortunate vacation.
Unfortunate vacation. But with like the dry spell of Destiny, we're still kind of waiting for more things to talk about. Of course, we do generate our own topics. But we do like to have some new things to talk about too. But that's one thing that this week has going for us. We can talk about some new things plus some other things that we had in mind for last week that we didn't get around to. So we got some good things coming.
And to give a quick, one-liner for to summarize, if we did do an episode last week, it would be I'm very over Telesto.
Yeah, Telesto joke officially buried. Let's move on. Everyone can move on now. All right, that's our recap.
I'd rather have Edge Transit jokes back.
That was good. Exotic Edge Transit.
Yeah.
Still waiting. They should make an Exotic Edge Transit with the 800% damage that GL's got. That would be sick.
That'd be pretty funny. That'd be pretty fun. Or they put you like a just a meme quest where you go in and you just get Edge Transit and just start obliterating what are those? Oh God, why am I blanking? The things in DSC. They're like
Briggs?
little IPs. Yeah, the Briggs.
Yeah,
there's a whole army of Briggs, and these things this Edge Transit just obliterates Briggs and
the perk
Fallen Walker tanks and
infinite
it's just
ammo.
Crazy.
You never have to reload. You do a bunch of damage, and then you leave the activity, and it gets disabled. It's disabled forever. Always in
it breaks. Vault. The gun just breaks when you go to orbit, and then it's just a memento at that point.
Gunsmith's like, oops, sorry, I broke it. guess we'll have to remember it by putting in this frame.
That'd be pretty funny. So we got some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we do have something new actually in Destiny for our What's New in Destiny 2 topic. We have a community event where you have to go play some strikes and Crucible and stuff like that, right?
But not quite.
Not quite.
Not quite. That's what you thought.
We get even more fun things. We get to go do Catch Crash instead.
And lost sectors and public events.
Yeah. It's funny. That. If we were allowed to play strikes or Crucible, at least we could, get some more rewards. But we get to go farm Glimmer with public events. Isn't that great? Man, that's
Glimmer's a necessity, man. It's a hot commodity.
Glimmer is right there above legendary shards as the most oppressed resource in the game.
I would rather have 100k Glimmer each season than any new raids. Quote me on that.
That's something, but you know what? If you need Glimmer. Once upon a time I would have wanted an enhancement course, but now I'm actually alright.
Same.
So yeah, the goal of this is to we end up building up the Elixir quarter, right?
I'm gonna be
get
honest.
some cool stuff for it.
I'm gonna be honest. I put out a tweet already about this, but don't ever sweat these events because Bungie's pride will not allow them to have any of these events fail, and that is proven by the fact that with as low as the player count is right now, we already hit 1 million. and there's no frickin' way that that was hit legit. There is already a modifier put in place right now where it's upping how much we're actually getting. And as time goes by, Bungie, it's going to slow down because, this is just not fun. I'm going to be honest. Like, it's just not there. And it's going to slow down, and Bungie's just going to keep silently upping the modifier until it's going to be like a 10,000 modifier. So where one person puts in like 100 and the event's pretty much done.
Which is kind of what they did for Worthy, but they had to
Yeah.
announce it for Worthy.
They've done
like,
it. They've done it
we're
for
not.
almost every single community event. Every single one.
I mean, because
They've put a modifier.
they have these like progression bars that they have that are evaluated, I will say, for like majority of the seasonal player base to do. But I guess it's just in case a bunch of people do it, they have it at the high bar, and then they're like, oh, you know what? Not many people are doing it, so they increase their modifier or lower the, essentially make it easier. And then, oh, you know what? Really, nobody's doing it, so they just super scale it, and then by the third week we're done. it's really that easy.
There is the conspiracy that this is basically just a test. This is a data gathering opportunity for Bungie to see the participation early and how fast it drops off, even with a quest that can give you different options and different ways to do, participate with it. And by using this data, they can shape other things, not necessarily community events, but now they have a better idea of how fast people dip from like a certain event if it's just blatantly just farming for seemingly nothing.
Because
like
this has got to be one of the most like simplistic design structures for a community thing.
That's like I call it a conspiracy because that's giving Bungie a lot of credit. That's assuming that they're taking this data and like putting it to good use, but more likely option is that it's just they made a community event and they were like, oh, this would be cool. They'll donate all this stuff and all their materials and whatnot, and then they don't care about any of this. They just look at, okay, we're really far from our goal. Let's start upping the modifier.
Yeah, because I mean, hey, picking all of these broad activities to include, it really goes to show like they just want to see. I do think there is some evidence to them wanting to collect data, but I think they collect data for pretty much everything they can, or at least I hope they do. So I think that aspect is like pretty realistic. Whether or not they're actually gonna like use it for something that's really gonna affect us is probably the more doubtful part. But essentially, the whole point of this event is, like I said, improving the Elixir quarter. So you go into the IP area, RIP raids, and I don't know. We're gonna spice it up with whatever people decide to do. That's kind of it. Most people will probably also have gotten their Scallywag title because they actually made it a lot easier. If you played like a good amount, like a healthy amount in the seasonal activity loop, you'll probably be done. Like I was only actually I just had to I just had to claim them. Yeah, I was chilling.
Yeah, mine auto completed, but I'm pretty sure I had everything except for the upgrades, and that one was just pure time gated. Like, and then they just reduced the amount of upgrades by like a third or something. So it just but to kind of round out this topic, the Elixir quarter is to me such a massively missed opportunity on all fronts, because you could have made that the new tribute hall. You could have made that an area to meme around with at the end of the season. You could have made that like just an area where you could just do fun stuff with little, there's no incentive or anything, but it's just to mess around and just do fun things. Like, they put in vehicles in there, and like you can go over and you could spawn like a fallen walker and just kill it and just kill them over and over again or whatever. Like, there's so much potential in this area, and there's literally nothing to do in there. You go there, you talk to a radio to get your triumph. You talk to the spider, and he gives you one of those crap engrams. Like at first, it was a funny meme giving you some random piece of armor that like 1 power, whatever it was. But like, I don't know. Like, there's just nothing to do there. It's literally like a speed bump in terms of like the seasonal quest.
It's
It's a
almost
literal
like
speed bump.
the it's almost exactly what the go here do this type thing. I remember Black Armory was full of this where you had to go talk to Ada, then go back here, then go back and talk to Ada. This is kind of like the same thing where you just go to like some useless place, but now instead of having to go to the tower, we go to some other fake tower that you can't do anything with. Like, I don't know. It's cool. It's environmental. It's, it helps build a narrative of the Elixir, but it's because of, Destiny's story structure and how slow it is, it ends up just feeling like a waste of resources.
Yeah, I mean, this is how they're bringing, and I air quote, this is how they're bringing back our raids. This is literally like the Scourge of the Boss final arena, the Scourge of the Past final arena. Okay, and this is how they brought it back.
We're
As
building
long
stairs.
as we have, as long as we have the Elixir Quarter, we can't get Scrog back. Like it just doesn't work. And the same reason, like as long as Haunted exists and Leviathan is the way it is now, we're not getting any of that back. Like in any unless they augment it, which I'm not sure that they're prepared to do.
Nah, they wouldn't.
They haven't.
That.
They
Again,
haven't
that's so many
shown
resources. Maybe like
they,
long term, like post all D1 raids being in the game, then that's reasonable. Because then I think like a reprise version of Levy, while I don't know if I'd necessarily want that as our new content, at least it kind of makes more sense based off of their design structure of taking the oldest raid content that they've taken away, whether that be D1 or early D2, and then re-implement it later.
It gets put in a queue, like a line.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I honestly do believe it's like they, take out Crota because it's not really a full raid. It was like the first raid layer of all of them, because it's the only one that's not a seasonal or like expansion release. The other 2 raids, take King's Fall and Wrath, they're expansion raids. So I kind of hate when people compare them as if they were equal, considering Crota's End was just a DLC for it. But either way, you have this queue like you're mentioning. Vault comes out, King's Fall comes out, next one's Wrath, the next one would be Levy, right? So that would be
I think they're gonna put Crota in
now.
there.
You think?
I
for
think
next
so.
one or just before?
Oh, after Wrath.
After
before
Wrath.
Levy.
I think that's possible.
I think they're gonna do it, and I think
again,
they're going
as long as they
to
treat it slightly differently, like by understanding that it is like a smaller raid that needs more expansive tuning besides just encounter tuning.
I don't think they're gonna add anything to it. They're gonna give it encounter tuning. I refuse to believe that Bungie would take a air quote D1 pinnacle activity like Crota, Crota's End. It is classified as a raid. It's a 6-man activity, and basically admit that it's not enough for 6 people anymore and drop it to 3. That's just not happening.
No, I don't think they'd make it a dungeon.
Yeah, and I don't think they're gonna extend it. They're gonna tune the encounters, and if anything, it's just gonna take more time. But it may just be more fun in general, like kind of like King's Fall. I mean, if they give it the King's Fall treatment, I won't be upset.
One can hope, but this is all speculation. So, nothing really more we can do about it. So let's go on to our sort of more heavy topic that we got more recently. Not in the game yet, but it is coming. This is our TWAB review with the comp changes coming.
This stuff is so unbelievably late, and like, what's the what was the Trials meme? It was like half baked.
Half baked, yeah.
Yeah, like this.
It's very half baked again.
This still feels extremely half baked. It seems like they
maybe a little more baked, but not more than 60%.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had more ideas and more things they wanted to put in, but because certain people at the top were like, let's push this back, let's hold this, let's get rid of this, like, and they kind of nitpicked what they were allowing to go through. I do think some of these changes are good. I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with that. But everybody's talking about, needing your reason to grind comp and whatnot, and for cosmetics and stuff like that. Like it, it's hard. I'm gonna speak on Bungie's behalf a little bit here. It's hard to do that kind of stuff when they do make a pinnacle thing or like a pinnacle like cosmetic to earn, and if it isn't exactly what people wanted, then it's worse than having nothing. Because they'll look at it, they'll nitpick it, and they'll immediately throw it to the trash. And if you got big names like, people like Gigs and uh, Salt now, and everybody else, kind of shitting on the reward for getting what's it called, like Ascendant or something.
Yeah, Ascendant. Yeah.
Yeah, Ascendant. As soon as they start shitting on like the pinnacle thing to earn the cosmetic, it's worse. It's worse than having nothing. At least that's how I see it. So right now, to me, again, this just seems like a playtest. They're putting a lot of these changes in, and if it gains traction, and I think that their goal here is to get people to engage more with a ranked and a more serious playlist while keeping Iron Banner and everything else very just easy and replayable. They want to see first if people are willing to climb the ladder.
Which
And
I
then if
think
they're
is
willing to climb
fine.
the ladder,
Like
then
I
they'll
think it's
invest into it.
fine for them to almost Crucible Labs type this experiment of ranking and really see
Mhm.
if it's something worth investing into, because guaranteed, no matter what, we will get some form of basic rewards with this. I know like there isn't really anything right now, but like even if it doesn't perform, you'll still get an Ascendant shard when you reach Ascendant, or an exotic weapon when you reach Adept or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just there might not be a Not Forgotten or a skin on a weapon ornament that that really comes, unless like you're talking about this sort of experiment proves to be fruitful for them to work on.
And I know, like, I think in our server, someone brought up how we have day one emblems, so it's like they could make an emblem for this, right? Well, like, I'm not a huge fan of that example, mainly because day ones are, it's it's an event, obviously for one day, and like you go in and it's you versus the game, right? Whereas with this, it's not just one day, it's over the entire season, and it's you versus other players, right? So Bungie directly controls how difficult it is to acquire the day one emblem, essentially, because they control how the game plays in a PvE sense. Whereas in PvP, it's not really up to them.
Yeah, PvE is
They can.
truly a level playing field. PvP is really a determinant of matchmaking more than anything, right? You can match with this loose SBMM. I have no idea how loose it actually means, but just by being a naturally higher skilled player, the equivalent content, let's say it's a 1 KD player, now is a 1, it's like playing a day one on contest because you're good, and then playing day one normal if you're bad, and then if you got world's first day one normal, it's still counted. It's kind of the same thing. Right? Not everyone's going against the same exact competition. Somebody's gonna play better one day. It's very variable.
And it's not to say that there shouldn't be something there. That's not what I'm saying, right? But also they're starting to design day ones around being completed by more players. Like that's their goal, their philosophy. They want more people to complete these things in the first day, right? And for us hardcore players, that's horrible. We hate hearing that. Like, oh, you should be, you should be rewarding the best of the best. You should invest in your hardcore players. Hardcore players are not what make this game succeed. And that's, to me, like, that's a no-brainer. The fact that there's people that feel so incredibly entitled because of how much time they've spent put into this game is amazing to me. Like, Bungie literally took away 60% of the game and put it in a vault somewhere, and we haven't seen even like 10% of it back yet. Okay? They don't owe you anything. They've made that abundantly clear. All right? Like, so to me, this is a no-brainer. Like, you know, yeah, day ones are getting easier and it's a little bit unfortunate, but they want people to use these emblems. They want people to feel that success, so they keep playing, so they tell their friends, and they're
It's the
mainly
same thing
looking
with
at console.
seals too. Like they've
Yeah.
completely admitted that basic seals are very attainable. And early on, Riven's Bane, like going for a
Yeah.
flawless last wish was
That
a
was that
very
was
difficult
something.
thing. At least for majority of player base.
And even Shadow. Remember Shadow?
Shadow was,
Having
I
Shadow
think, the
was
hardest thing to do. Like the
that was
hardest base
that was
seal.
the last in one of if not the last time that this game truly rewarded people for being excellent was Shadow.
Yeah, yes. I love using Commander to block that ogre.
Oh,
Literally
it
the
was
best
so
thing.
good. It was kind of like how Rolk kind of shits on Wells, or I don't know if he does now, but like back then, just having the ogre just does not care about your well at all. It was so good.
Isn't it kind of crazy to think we still are like that fond of that moment so many years later?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kind of strange. I don't know.
It was because it was a moment that made you actually like think. It gave you fear. Like you felt vulnerable. Right now we have 100 resilience, 2 resist mods. Like I
Blinding weapons, things that just insta
blinding
kill,
weapons,
weapons that heal us.
well of tenacity, like uh, I just
There's so many things.
restoration. Like it's just
Restoration. Yeah,
it doesn't
we're
end,
crazy
man.
broken.
Oh my god, it's like if you're getting run over, there's a checklist that you can run down, and it starts with what's your resilience, what are your chest piece mods, um and then after that, are you playing the game?
Are you playing the game
Like,
effectively? Are you using the right subclass? Are you
you
throwing?
could, you could even in most activities, you could I mean, maybe not like master stuff because that or GMs because that stuff hits relatively hard,
Which is
but
crazy to say because that's supposed to be like what you're saying. That's the scary thing. I remember doing GMs right away, and they were like an ad would push you, and you'd be afraid. Now
dude,
you
if you
just
got
kind of
pushed by a
tank them.
single scion, you were screaming
Yeah, when
because
they just
that
like
one
sprint by
scion
you, and then it's
ran
just
you
like,
over.
oh my god, he's just like behind me now. What? I have nowhere to go. I just run and die.
Yep, and you can't kill him fast enough because your primaries and whatever,
Unless you
a
just
lot
have
of
a
special.
rocket and you
Yeah,
just want to waste it,
yeah,
which you might have
exactly. Like
to,
it
but
was it
then
was genuinely
you're never gonna kill a champion.
it was genuinely terrifying. And it's funny. I remember people saw the void burn changes and stuff, like the burn changes to GMs and to just nightfalls in general.
There's so much complaining about
Um,
it.
and they were crying, and I remember looking at that and I go, "This is before resilience change." I was like, "This is just better." Like, we take more damage. You're already
Yeah, I
getting one
know.
shot in GMs. Like, what's more damage? Who
If you had
cares?
any poor positioning early in GMs, you're just dead anyway. Like you can't just
Yeah,
sit outside, even with max resil. You can't really just sit outside.
but that was before Rezel, and then even with Rezel now, even with the increased damage, you're still unkillable. Like, you can still actually take quite a bit of damage, and now we just have this massive elemental boost for seemingly no reason. Like to me, I don't. It shouldn't be there. I mean, to me a GM should just be really hard enemies, and kind of like we're just at our level. Like we don't have a whole lot going for us.
I like the burn because it's kind of like OG D1 Nightfalls. It's just that the game is very different now.
Yeah,
It
that's
doesn't like D1 Nightfalls when you had the burn. Your damage and everything was coming from your weapons, so it kind of made sense to have such a crazy scaler. Now you have that crazy scaler attached to infinite damage boost you know, arc nades or void nades or solar,
Yeah.
basically any nade. Right? It's like and
Yeah, I mean,
abilities and
you have
supers.
fusion nades, you have
It's
contra nades, you have storm nades.
I know, like
Like,
every rainbow is affected. Like every single subclass and element has like a strong nade build, pretty much.
mhm.
So and basically nades are OP, especially with their uptime nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, and it also doesn't help that 5 of our GMs were arc burn during this
For real.
storm nade meta right now with Heart of
I
Inmost
just
Light. Like,
hate not
it's
having the variety. Granted, I mean I haven't done a single GM this season, so gotta, so gotta
I
get on
I
that.
did them apparently. I don't remember when. They just happened, and I blinked and they were done. You know, I just that's insane to me. I don't know.
I gotta get that conch seal. But speaking of seals, we do have a new seal. Let me find it. Unless you already have it. It's called
Oh, for
Glorious, right?
the competitive division.
Mm-hmm. It's like the new Unbroken. Here it is. Say hello to
yeah.
Glorious.
Apparently, yeah, they said that they want this to be
Very
easy
comp
to
focused,
get, but
but hard to
but
gild.
the gilding is the hard part. Which this just goes back to what I was saying, which is like they are not making this game for us, and they probably never will, because most hardcore players, believe it or not, are not spending that much money. Like, if they lose players, I think Salt said something about this. If they lose players, Bungie will not look to us to keep them alive.
Yeah, we
If
don't.
they lose players, they're
We're
gonna
not
do
the player
things.
base that likes to go buy emotes because we didn't get Bright Dust. The Bright Dust is honestly for us who do all the seasonal challenges.
Yeah, that's why they've neutered Bright Dust, like, economy and like the way you farm it and how much you get per season. I mean, you really have to kind of work for it. When before, in year one, they were just throwing that shit away. Like, it was crazy how much Bright Dust I had in year one, and like just wasted basically. Because I didn't think they would ever stop.
I know, same.
And then sure enough, they tuned it down. I remember the big patch where they tuned it down. I don't know, someone did the percentages basically, and they were like, we're losing like 80% of our Bright Dust gain or something like that.
But you can
You know,
go
all you
get it now always. You can just go do bounties and play Crucible every week.
Yeah.
Yeah, though the
Okay.
people who used to cope with that, like I don't know how much time they spent doing those playlists, but it must have been crazy high to get consistent Bright Dust to where it actually was better. Because technically, if you did everything, it was better. But who the hell is literally doing like
They forced a
everything?
very large time commitment on it, which, granted, I guess that sort of makes sense, right?
Yeah, like I
But
think it's fine. Obviously, I'd
but
like it
it
to
still
be a little
sucks.
of the floor to be a little bit higher, but you know.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, all of this is just more proof that not necessarily the Bright Dust talk, but the stuff before that
Yeah.
this is with the seal and the divisions. I hope that it applies to the divisions about like the skill curve and having people feel successful. They never mentioned where they feel that the average player will be. Um, but I do think that like the gold plat range, I'll say gold is going to be like your average kind of above 1 KD type player. We
Mhm.
will kind of fall into the higher plat, low adept type tier, I would say, where you're a good player, but you're not some like Crucible God. You can, you'll hold your own and do well. And then if we wanted to, we can kind of work together a little bit and grind for the ascendant thing. Kind of
And
similar, I would say, to what 2100 was for base
Yep.
Redrix. That's just my theory. I have no reason to believe this aside from what you're saying and what I believe too about having they want people to feel good. I'm in gold status. Oh, I got to plat 1 today, dude. Oh my god, that's crazy. You're in plat. Like,
yeah.
they want
It's
people they want that large player base to be able to increase their rank and
and
decrease and then go back up because that's more engaging to them.
and they see the success of games like Apex, Valorant, right? You know, I'm not a huge fan of those games personally, but those games, they sell. They sell a lot because they have people that play them. They love PvP, and they want something. They want a rank to chase. They want to get better in this game, right? And that's their way of seeing where they are, right? Like you have people that play Valorant and they're, I don't even know the ranks in Valorant, but they're hard stuck in like bronze or whatever like a low rank is, right? And they're constantly playing because they want to get better, and they have a mental goal that they set for themselves, and when they hit it, like we always go back to, it feels good, and they
I
keep
mean,
playing.
for me, it was like the classic CS:GO rank up type feeling because that's like the comparable game. Although Counter Strike was, at least when I played, a little harder to. That's kind of when you were stuck in certain elo divisions and you just could never rank up because you wouldn't necessarily. Yeah, exactly. Like upper MG, DMG, like you have to. There's this massive threshold to get into the LE, and once you got to LE, you just LEM supreme.
You're smooth sailing.
You'd go.
LE
so
was
fast,
the hard stopgap. It was wild.
Yeah, it really was crazy. Which I mean, to be honest, if Bungie wanted to, they can make Adept that tier where it's like the entry to Adept is like really hard. And that's kind of once you actually do get to the upper tiers. But then you have all the other from Copper to Platinum where normal players can go.
And to jump in again, like games like Overwatch that just came out, people are climbing the ladder on Overwatch, right?
Yeah, and they've made Overwatch comp easier.
Yeah, like this is something that they know that people will chase in their game. Like the normal, the average person will chase, which again, this is not for PvP gods. Like surprisingly, it's just not. Because you'll find a lot of the PvP gods, they'll probably make their way to Ascendant, or on the climb to Ascendant, they're just gonna keep playing the same people. Like there's gonna be this like subset of people that are just
it's like
they're just gonna keep fighting the same people.
Players. But I do think like it's like once you kind of hit Ascendant, I don't know, you're not gonna want to keep playing. There was never really a reason to keep playing before when you got to like 5500, for example. So I suppose that's
really like PvP, different. Then like if this is your jam and you love
literally
this shit,
competitive PvP where you're gonna try and play against good players and maybe a couple cheaters, then like 5500 and Ascendant I think are pretty much the same thing. I'll say incentive to stay there is your multiplier. So I guess they are introducing finally, after literally like 3 seasons after I thought they would do it, you can finally focus your Crucible things. So if any PvE player ever wanted to get a really good Riptide, like a chill clip Riptide is one of the best legendaries in the game, like specials in the game, in my opinion.
Yep.
Like
no, it is. It just is.
It just is. I mean, chill clip is crazy good, and on a fusion rifle, you just have so much uptime on it. And
it's
then
a rapid fire, right?
Rapid fire. So I mean, it's literally even just decent as a weapon too. Like I fucking love that thing so much. It's so good.
It's technically a better Cartesian.
I mean, yes, I would say it's literally a better Cartesian.
Like
right?
People still use Cartesian, which to be honest kind of blows my mind. Every time I see someone use that gun, I'm like, man, this thing.
You must really have no better thing to use.
Honestly, you're better off putting on Jotun, like unironically.
It's
or Merciless, like it's just, I don't know. Cartesian is just, without that mod, it's just bad in my opinion.
And Shield Clip provides so much like rapid fires already have pretty good general use. You can have higher DPS on a target if you needed to. Their floor and ceiling are pretty much the exact same because you can't get crits, so it's already good at that. Chill Clip just adds so much, like it basically benefits you as a boss damage, or not necessarily boss damage, a major damage weapon, because you're gonna have the shatter damage. But then it's also just better at ad clearing, because if you ever do get a shatter, it's just gonna kill things, right? So it's literally just gonna slow everything. Either or, like it's just better. Like just trust us, it's just better. But that's not the only good weapon. The SMG, I like a lot. I don't necessarily love Amalons. I know other people don't either, but I have 2 roles: Demo with Tricorn and Demo and Adrenaline Junkie. Both are like super good roles to pair with any Arcanade build. You can get Phantomite super easily. And honestly, same goes for the hand cannon. Crisis Inverted, I believe it's called. You get pretty much similar roles. Like I have a Demo one for all, but like It's just a super
Hand cannons are in a weird
nice.
spot, but
I mean, sure, but still a hand cannon. I think hand cannons in
yeah,
PvE are always kind of good,
somewhat of a staple. Yeah,
right? But I agree.
I mean,
It's not necessarily an SMG or a double special setup.
yeah, I mean, and it just gives you a way to I guess properly, repay you for your time invested, being able
Yeah.
to focus. Like focusing is right now the best thing we have in terms of respecting the player's time. Anywhere you can focus an engram, that's like a good use of your time, in my opinion.
And really, all this, this multiplier for your comp rank, that's just kind of furthering that respecting your playtime. If you want to play to get to plat and get a 1.3x multiplier, you're 30%. That's pretty good, just for
Hmm.
plat. You know, do that the beginning or middle of a season, and then just make sure you're always kind of in that division. You don't have to play super often to do it. I don't think even gold, like you can probably not AFK gold, but you can probably chill and do gold and
Yeah,
get 20% just throughout the season. That's pretty good.
yeah. But I think to round it out, these changes, in my opinion, they're a good start. Right. This is sort of a healthy turn. Um, Now the cosmetic rewards thing, look, I might just honestly to me, just get over it. That's without, there's no way to sugarcoat it, man. At least for I don't know, like Bungie's not going to put these crazy cosmetic rewards behind things. I don't doubt that there's going to be an emblem. They didn't even say that there won't be an emblem. They said they didn't say there was. They didn't say there wasn't. So they're. I mean,
I mean, they were pretty
Cru-
just specific on the changes. The only
yeah.
real reward we have is Rose coming back, which really, again, just like every other weapon we've ever gotten, depends on what rolls it can get, you know?
Hmm.
So it's going to be another kinetic 140 hand cannon.
It's
If you
it's either
feel like you
gonna.
already have one that's good, then I wouldn't care about Rose. But I do think Rose is kind of designed as almost that, like, oh, you haven't played comp, you don't have a good weapon, grind for this hand cannon. It'll be good.
Hmm.
It'll be easy to get. And that's just kind of
Yeah.
like their way to bait
It's
the
to entice
newer
people to get
audience.
in. Yeah, they want to make it somewhat easy and they kind of give someone something, and as long if Rose has really good PvP perks, which it probably will, rangefinder. I'm not a turbo PvP guy, so like I don't know, rangefinder, Eye of the Storm. I don't know,
Yeah, something like
you
that.
know,
That'd be great.
then
Really,
then
all it
people are
comes
gonna
down
use
to,
it.
you just have to play per character. Um,
Yeah,
and
and if
then
you don't care, then great, you don't care.
get your weapon. All you have to do is just do the weekly competitive challenge. So pretty easy. So that about wraps up our comp slash twab talks. There's some other stuff, like there's a little bit of game security things they talk about, a little bit about
Iron Banner stuff too. I
Iron
think too.
Banner matchmaking. They kind of dive into that a little bit.
I will say the Fortress stuff, the fact that there's some PVE in here, this is interesting. Um, if it's what I mean, I hope it's not just you're playing PvP and all of a sudden some turds show up at a point
I
randomly. Like if it's that, then
gotta have my
that's
Firefly weapon.
stupid. Yeah, then that's just stupid. But I hope that this is actually like imagine Iron Banner gets a PvE game mode.
It's kind of
Um,
interesting. Like I think it's a good idea to throw in. Like it's just something, It's
it
it's,
might it
it's neat.
it might garner more Iron Banner participation because ever since they lowered the amount of Iron Banners a season, I feel like people just aren't doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I do think the returning armor will help a lot too.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
E1 armor is
Um,
pretty nice for Iron Banner, so people getting back.
I mean, it seems like Bungie is smart in the sense that they haven't just dumped all the really good stuff from D1 into the game, because what they do is they slowly sprinkle it in, and it's almost like buying time, right? By doing this, they've now bought some favor with
Hmm.
people, like, oh, we got the armor back, so it'll buy us a little bit of time, and I mean that's the way you have to do it, man. You can't, because if they didn't do that, then they'd be getting flamed more than they already are on Twitter, like day in day out. So
All right, so we're good with that. Our final little thing we're going to talk about will probably take up the remainder of our time. Last time we talked about how you can kind of come in as a new player and learn about the game. What should you focus on to sort of get better at? What are some things that you can do to maybe improve, learn from, so on and so forth. We kind of ended with let's see where we left. We talked about the basics of mods and builds. Why are certain things better than others? So let's say, like, why is this forbearance better than the wave frame from Season of the Risen? And like understanding like how perks can affect the role, how our new origin traits can affect things. And our final thing we kind of left off with was doing research. Like, doing research helps so much. The more you kind of look into something, more understanding you'll have of the topic. So from there, we're kind of taking the next steps and what kind of paths we can take to get better. Because at least personally, I don't think it's one linear path. You don't necessarily just want to go from doing solo nightfalls to going to do raid flawlesses to going to do it's not like that. But you can take aspects of every activity, I think, and sort of tailor make your own path of progression to eventually become an elite player. And what I mean by an elite player or a great player is somebody who can go into a team of other good players, other great players, I should say, try to keep things consistent, and get a day one, get a top 100 clear, like be one of those players.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, like you could look at this very generally, and I think, Cruz, you want to talk a little bit about kind of like low manning, dungeoning, and stuff like that, and then the little niche topics, like for me at least, is understanding yourself, right, and where you shine, like what is your strengths and how do you apply your strengths to succeed better with others, and other niche things, like, just to throw out a random example, knowing how to use double special.
Yeah, for real. Like, double specials
You
are
know?
really it's funny to think it came out in Forsaken and it didn't
Mhm.
really pop off until, I don't know, halfway through like Shadowkeep year, and then really Beyond Light. That's when it started
Yeah. I
coming
mean,
around.
especially now, to talk a little bit about the double special thing, understanding what your subclass is capable of, and then also your ammo economy, and if you're making your own ammo or if someone else is making ammo for you through special finishers or like Aeon finishers, um, all of that plays a huge part. And part of that is communicating with your team, and also part of that is just knowing what you're doing, right? If you're using like RB, a slug shotgun, and a linear, you better have a lot of ability spam, because you're not going to be shooting a lot of ads with your weapons. Like, there's a reason you have that loadout, right? Versus if you swap the slug for, let's say, a forbearance, right? If you could just kill the whole room with 2 grenades, you know, two bullets, done. The whole room's dead. And understanding kind of like how special ammo swapping works, you can swap off RB into something else, and as long as you don't use that special, it should maintain the same ammo, right? Um, it's little things like that, and being able to like work with your team, and you know, like Aeons is a huge part of the game right now, huge. And I said this in the last episode. I think it was last episode. To me, ammo economy is king right now. Like, that is the main thing. If you can manage your ammo economy, you can do anything in this game. Anything. Right? Like, you look at King's Fall, making sure everybody had linear was important, and that's why you used, Kata reads and like RB. Um, you look at Vow, ammo economy was huge there too, because you needed a lot to put Rolk down. Like, to me, it's just a no brainer.
The ammo economy is why my team used RB instead of Izzy for our roll kill. When it's like, why would we use RB over Izzy? You know, you think Izzy reload your 4 shots, you get that huge damage burst. It pairs well with an auto-loading rocket. But because of how long you have plenty of time up there. And when you're done your fight, you don't necessarily want to have nothing either. Because that's going to make so much, like everything else, so much harder if you only have primary ammo. So you can swap out that Izzy for an RB, what we did. Your total damage is super high with it. And you're going to have it all the time. So it ends up making more sense to use a gun like Arbalist over Izanagi, even though like the pairing makes sense on paper for like a rocket swap.
Now the big thing here also is RB rocket doesn't leave a lot of room to make up the damage, and that's part of the strengths of Cruz's team is they know that they're not going to make a lot of mistakes, and so they can do that strategy, right? Whereas if you use Izanagi rockets, you're putting out a lot of damage and in quite a short burst, which means you have time to kind of mess up,
Yeah,
right?
for
Because
sure.
you can sort of make that up with Izzy rockets, whereas Cruz's team, they're comfortable. They're completely comfortable. They know that they're going to hit the breakpoints that they need. They know they're going to hit the damage they want, and they don't need to worry about making up that time, right? And so, like my team, for instance, we did Izzy Rocket, and we were making sure to do special finishers on the top plate and also on the bottom, leading up to damage, right? So we had communicated and figured out a way to do an Aeon swap, kill a couple A bombs, um, do a lot of special finishers, and gen all the ammo we could ever need, and be completely prepared, right? But if we weren't going to do that, then you have to look at the total, right? You have to look at how to conserve as much ammo, right? Which just goes back into like kind of ammo is everything. Unless you have an Atheon scenario, which then, it's abilities.
Yeah, obviously there's context to what you use, roll kid context because of what type of enemy he is, and that's why we use certain things. Nowadays I would say just roll up with LFRs because LFRs are even easier. But we had our own reasons, I'll say, for wanting to use rockets. Because
And
honestly, like as good as LFRs are, they're pretty bad normally. So if you want to have a rocket, I like rockets more in a day one setting just because they're better just at heavy weapons at doing things like, oh, there's a group of ads, I can just rocket them all and they're dead. It makes it easier for us.
and that's another thing that like using rockets to add clear um is, in my opinion, something that only happens in a day one or in a GM.
Yeah, pretty much when ads are
Because
really hard to kill or really
that, and
important to
also,
kill.
yeah, that expect like priority targeting, and also when you're put in a scenario where you don't know kind of exactly what's going to happen, like in a day one, and a bunch of ads just spawn, you just dump rockets, just fire and forget, get rid of all of that's in front of you. Where if
Which
you had an
just
LFR
frees up
equipped, you're just
complications, because if an
yeah.
ad spawns and you're trying to like pick them off with your hand cannon, and they start, overwhelming you, and now you're dead. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just don't want to necessarily take the chance, and, an LFR can't do that. So there's a reason why you'd want to use that. But hey, if I'm using a forbearance, then I would use an LFR because my forbearance can do the exact same thing. So again, all this stuff is just to say there's context in terms of what you use and
Yep.
why you have to choose a certain thing over another thing. It's very unique
and
based
that's
off what you're doing.
and that's why there's like these tried and true loadouts and setups that you'll see a lot of top players use. That they don't put this on for no reason, because it covers so many bases. Like I said, having forbearance on, you can kill like even majors. You can kill even yellow bars. Wait, the yellow bars are those ultras?
I mean, yellows are
Which is the
included
weaker
in
ones?
majors are weaker.
Okay, yeah. So you
They're
can kill like
orange
majors and
technically.
just regular trash with forbearance, right? And then you have your other special to kill, kind of the chunkier guys, and you have your heavy for boss DPS if you're in a boss type encounter. right?
Yeah, it covers all bases, you know.
You're
That's why it's
you're
so good.
complete, and that's without abilities. I didn't even include your abilities. That's
Yeah.
just your 3 weapons, right? Your abilities make this so much easier. Like every class is really good. Like all the subclasses, in my opinion, they're all pretty strong right now. Like they all have sort of some way to get themselves going. I mean, I
Even
think
the
Void
bad
Hunter,
ones are still good.
yeah,
They're
they're
just
still
not great,
usable. You
you
just have
know.
to know what you're doing, and that's a part of going from good to great. You have to be able to, if you get stuck on Arc Hunter, for instance, and you can't be going around punching ads, you need to know what you're doing. Like it not being able to do any of those things, especially when your team needs it, or let's say it's just something to kind of push you over the edge a little bit on damage, for instance, that's gonna hold you back, right? And being able to kind of adapt on the fly like that, to at least for me, this is something that's huge. Being able to see what your team needs, or ask what your team needs. Hey, do you need me to swap to Titan? Or do you need me to swap to this? Or do you need me to swap to this subclass? Or do you need me to do this for you? Do you need me to kill this ad for you? I can watch this for you. I can leave you a rift when I leave to go dunk, so it's easier for you, right? Like all these things you should be thinking, and your team should be thinking, because if you're all doing that to each other, then you're just working so much more cohesively than everybody kind of playing super selfish, right? Like, because if you're looking out for your team and everybody else in your team is looking out for you, everybody's looking out for each other effectively, and then that's how things just end up like being easier, you know. And at least for me personally, it's kind of like a sort of a swallow your pride moment in a way. I don't know. What do you think, Cruz?
So I would really just say like all of that comes down to like what I'd call like game IQ, or my terminology from all my CS years and stuff like that is your game sense, and how
That's
important
a good word.
that is for really just team dynamic, and like learning about why things work and how to really just play effectively with each other. Because in a team dynamic, you have to understand like what your team is going to be doing just as much as yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think a small but a relatively good example is looking at totems and King's Fall. If you were on a hunter, those totems, they could have gotten scary. Even with forbearance, it could have been scary,
Yeah,
right?
it was different.
Without invis and stuff, you didn't have a rift, you didn't have a bastion wall, you didn't have any of that. So, you know, knowing that as the warlock, you could have left a rift. The Titan could have left a bastion wall. Like they could have placed it as they were leaving, right? All these things like are pretty important, and even using something like Lumina or putting on healing nades, all these things add up. That it's if you can manage without a, I say a good kinetic, but like you know if you can manage just playing with Lumina, just having the gun on, I don't see a downside. Like if that's what you think, if that's the burden that you can shoulder, and that helps your team and not just you, to me that's good game sense, because you're looking out for everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if there's so long as there's no like significant trade off, that's really what's important in terms of your loadout decisions. But I don't necessarily want to just like kind of ramble about what we think and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and a lot of metaphorical stuff. I do have like a list of, I'll say, general harder things to do, and kind of like a progression that I would say I followed early on. And then
and
so I'll go through this, and then if you ever want to just jut in, I can say X topic and kind of give my reasoning why. If you want to jut in about like things about it, or maybe say, oh, I would do this first, like we can do that.
well, I mean, I guess I'll preface, this there's a disclaimer here. Just because Cruz did this doesn't mean this is like the perfect path, right?
Definitely not. I did
This
not do
is not the
things
perfect path. This is what he
perfectly.
did. This is what makes sense to us or to him. And do not hear this and think like, oh, this is all I got to do and I can end up in Elysium.
This ain't the
or
gospel,
T1?
but
Okay,
it helped me, so it might end up helping you. The game is different.
exactly.
I would say, like, I think that's a really big thing to understand, is that when I was like kind of coming up, I will say, and like trying to improve myself, this was like the age of like Callus being like the only low man in the game, right? So this was years ago. The game is very, very different now. My first
Still
low
can't believe you
mans
messaged me. That's
were,
crazy.
to get join. I mean, I saw your
Sorry,
post.
continue.
I mean, it could have been Frenchie's, but I saw yours.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh, shucks, I should have picked Frenchie. Didn't know.
Yep, too damn bad.
Dang, feels bad. But yeah, like when I was doing my first lowmans, it was like a double primary meta, and then over the three or so years that followed, obviously a lot of things changed. The Reckoning era happened where we were so powerful they had to push us off the map. And I think we're kind of this is sort of a wave, and I do think we're kind of approaching that peak right now. I hope it's the peak. I hope we don't get any more powerful, but I don't know for certain.
I don't know, man. Strand's looking pretty.
Strand might be like the rebalancing kit. It'd be like, all right, you can only use Strand in this new activity, and it just sucks.
I for one think Strand is not going to be. It's going to be just simply a movement thing, and I mean, for some people that's enough, but that's all it's going to have. That's just me.
I hope it has some endgame viability. I don't want it to be OP, and I don't want it to be bad. But anyway, so when I started, or what I think is good to start with, once you're in this good category, right? This is all talking about from last episode on. You've done your research. You kind of know you've already been doing master nightfalls. You're with a couple buddies that are also pretty good at the game. You want to find some ways to challenge yourself.
You farm the weapons.
Yeah, exactly. You've got like the good weapons. You've done raids before, like handful of raids. Like you flawless them in a fire team, like a full fire team. I think starting with like your early low manning, and what I mean by that is your Oryx 3-mans, or final boss 3-mans. Pretty much that's what it means. That and solo dungeons. Don't have to do them flawlessly, but just kind of those two are really good ways to limit who's helping you. And that puts a lot more onus on you, a lot more responsibility for you to be able to do a mechanic and deal the damage required and survive. There's just more things going on, and that's a really hard thing early on to manage. For me now,
very
like,
good point.
I can do that stuff because I have so much more experience. Like if I'm solo, it's fine. I know how to position, but early on, this was really difficult. So once you can kind of get over that, get a little bit better, get these 3-man, the boss ones down. Now I would say this is where you transition into more of the late low manning, your solo flawless dungeons. You're gonna basically take what you learn from your 3-man or your solo dungeon, and now you're gonna go try and 3-man the whole raid, or 2-man the boss, or you're gonna go try and solo flawless the dungeon. Basically, you're just kind of adding that next layer of difficulty on. This is probably when things can start getting a little bit more hairy in terms of what you feel like you can do. Because once you start, you're getting your raid report and has all the, low man tags, it can feel like you're kind of stuck. I'm not somebody who... Oh yeah, whenever you want, just jump in.
I just wanted to jump in real quick on that point. This is about the time where you start to find people that are doing the same thing as you, and this is where you start to really kind of meet that group that you're going to usually stick with or end up doing most of these things with.
Yeah, I would say like that. Once you kind of get those dungeons and early low manning, like once you get that done, before you get into that late low manning, you kind of want to have that group of players that you're comfortable with to work with.
Yes, because with the less people you have, the more things you're doing, the more you're gonna have to start to trust the people you're with.
Right? Absolutely.
And you can get away with a lot just doing a boss with 3 people, but doing the whole raid, you gotta put some stock in the people you're playing with and kind of believe in them.
So like I totally agree. with that, like I said, this kind of where it gets hairy. I think that there's some value in doing what I would call moderately serious speedrunning. And that's only because that's kind of what we did. You remember like our Goss speeds?
Yeah. Those are pretty
I
fun, actually.
think with like our team, it helped me a little bit by just kind of nailing execution. Of course, in a day one environment, your goal here is to become like a top 100 type player. And in those raids, you don't know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But once you kind of do know what's happening, being able to optimize it is a really valuable thing to learn. And while necessarily you won't always use it, there are times where if you do get stuck, you will have to think about optimizing. Let's say our damage is just a little bit short. Can I put on an Ikelos SMG and make a power Rasputin for everyone just to get a little bit more? Like, does that make sense? Is that something that we can use? I think this part
to kind of slide in here.
Yeah, go.
Sorry, real quick. It's I know you brought up how in a day one you don't know what you're doing versus a speed run you know what you're doing. They both follow the same philosophy in the sense of in the day one, once you figure out what to do, how quickly can you keep doing it and keep getting better at it? And the same thing happens in a speed run. Once you start learning the speed run strats and start doing it, how quickly can you fine tune it? Right? Like, not, I shouldn't say fine tune it, but how quickly can you like lock it in basically? Like
Yeah, you really want to
you're
master it.
100% consistent. Like
Yeah.
it's that consistency you're looking for in both a day one and speed runs. And that's like a really good skill to have, is once you've figured out a strat that works for you, how consistent can you get at it each time in a 3-man and in a team environment? So sorry, continue.
And while speedruns, you're gonna end up using your eager edge swords to optimize. Day one, you're not necessarily gonna be doing that. They can both follow the same principle, but by using different things. Like I can use an eager edge thing the same way I might use a linear instead of a rocket, where I have to slightly change my playstyle to where it might be worse later, but it's better now, or better later and worse now. All of it is really just geared towards optimizing and then mastering what you're doing, which I think can help both mechanically because you have to do it fast and well, and also mentally because you're moving quickly, you have things to think about, and all this kind of adds together to add some form of skill. I don't think necessarily comp is like a great way to go get mechanical skill. I think there's other ways to do that, probably outside of Destiny. I wouldn't really think Destiny is a great game to learn mechanical skill, but you can do it. PvP is there. I'm not necessarily advocating for it, but if you do want to insert it to get some form of mechanical skill, this is where I would try to do it. Your final tier is kind of your hardest low mans. This is basically where you're going to go try to do a duo flawless. And this isn't even necessarily going to be harder, but it's kind of incorporating the execution portion of it, where you can't mess up, or you like, if you mess up, you have to be able to cover really quickly, because you can't just play recklessly. You have to think a little bit more. Me, I'm never really one to do flawless ones more recently, because I just don't feel the same passion for the current low mans that we have versus the older ones. That's something that I feel like I was fortunate. My come up happened at a good time when low mans were really expansive and difficult. While now I think they're a little bit more gimmicky, but you got to work with what you got. So I'd still say if you are trying to master that final tier content, flawlessing your duos and trios is kind of like what you have left to do. Don't really think GMs have too much in terms of like soloing. You can if you want. A lot of the times it's just going to come down to ability spam. More recently, I think earlier on you might have gotten some value of it for positioning, but if you think about it and you try to work on your critical thinking during GMs, then I think that's where you can get some benefit from it, because positioning matters a lot more in a GM than it does in pretty much any other content. Not to say it takes a lot. If you really want to, you can start lowering your resale, but now you're purposely trying to handicap things, which is really kind of that final thing for me, and that's not using the meta. Because if you're if you find the game when you're using Anarchy in its heyday, or Whisper, Linear and Forbearance and Root Tides, and it's just like, wow, I can do all these low mans. Try to use them, or try to do them without using double special, or without using the most optimal, don't use Trinity Ghoul on Sank or Totems or something like that. Just different ways to make it so you can't just insta-kill an enemy. Having that difficulty is something, and that's kind of that final tier.
And to touch on that a little bit, there's a difference between, sitting there and playing with like 5 resilience and just not using some of the most broken weapons in the game, right? Like not using like 10 resilience. I'm not sure that that's like, I don't know. There is some value to it, but I don't think it's that great, because in most scenarios where you're actually trying, you're gonna have 10 resilience, right? Whereas in those scenarios also, you may not be able to use the most broken weapons because you're using something else for a very specific purpose, right? You're never lowering your resilience for a niche thing, like a niche mechanic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a
Whereas you
really
could
good
find
point
yourself,
to say,
you
like,
could,
your resil and your stats aren't really getting compromised like your weapons are, or even your subclass. Like, you might be forced to use a not great subclass because you need it for something else.
mm-hmm. And with that being said, um, like one thing Cruz and we pride ourselves in is obviously knowing just about everything there is in the game, right? And then also being able to use it, right? Like when we early on, before Arba best, meta, we used to do GMs, and I would tell Cruz, hey, I got anti-barrier pulse with disruption break, so run Izzy, right? And what that meant was, now Cruz knows that when there's an anti-barrier, he needs me to break it, right? So Cruz is aware of what I'm using because we kind of have this sort of agreement. And then I break it with my pulse. It procs disruption break, so then he shoots it with Izzy. Half that champ's health is gone instantly in one shot, right? And that's like part of it goes kind of to not using the meta, right? Because we could have just used whatever was the best thing at the time, or we could have just not gone with disruption or just had anyone break the shields, but we were going for something very, very specific.
Yeah, you
right?
can just have anyone break the shield, and you're all gonna use your, I don't know, G Horn and Rocket, and you're just gonna instantly kill them, and you get to move on with your day and go get your loot. But I mean, I think to us, that's not always that much fun. We like to try and throw in some curveballs. So, hey, let's use Disruption Break and try to maximize something. Sure, is it as realistically efficient? No, but we're getting experience with something new, and it's also a way to kind of add more fun to it. So, kind of what you said earlier, but I'd also add it's sort of a form of optimization, because you are trying to use a weaker thing that's then buffing another thing that's better now. And it's like, okay, I'm doing this trade-off, but now I'm optimizing this Izzy damage, when normally I would have just broken the shield and been on my day.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to. It doesn't start or stop at weapons. We ended up we ended up completing that the 2-man corrupted,
Yeah, and we're
with Tether
stubborn.
and Thundercrash, right?
Yeah, I said we were gonna
Yeah,
do it no matter what. Like, we're not changing.
yeah.
We literally couldn't like change our loadout.
And
Vandal
this
was using
was
Bastion. I had Arbalest and something else.
I think this was before Rezil too.
Yeah, it was before Risa. Yeah,
This
because
was
we were
before
dying on
Rezil.
the platform instantly, and also we weren't allowed to like cheese it. We had to play it legit. Like,
Yep.
we had to play like
We
when
played on those stairs in
yeah.
the final boss area. Like, we didn't jump back. We played on those stairs and fought to the
Oh my
death
god, literally to the death.
with
Like,
those
it took
taken.
it could take a couple tries, a
I
lot of
mean,
tries.
it was crazy because we throw that juicy tether, we hit the massive thunder crash, and like the it was optimizing, and then also like the panic and being able to like fight in those scenarios, and kind of like Cruz trusting me and me trusting Cruz kind of moment. Like, that was so fun. It was
Mhm.
it was challenging.
The fun
So
things are challenging. That's usually where most of, at least my fun, comes from. when it's
Oh
like
yeah.
challenging, but not like
For,
annoyingly challenging.
I guess for me, it just as long as something requires me to use my brain. If I can do this activity by staring at the ground with Trinity Ghoul, you lost me, which is most activities right now. So, but
What do you think of my
I,
list though? Does it make sense?
no, it's a really good progression in there. Um, I think it's very accurate to what kind of people go through naturally, and they find themselves looking for like-minded players looking to start low manning early. You might not end up sticking with those guys or with that group. But I know once you get into the full raids, you start to like I said, you kind of refine it a little bit. You start to find a community where people are like-minded, or willing to teach you, or willing to go through the same trials as you are, basically. Um, and as far as knowing where to go for that, I know that there's a low man server. I know that the Elysium community server, which we have in the description, a link down there. You can go in there, and I know there's a bunch of people that are usually looking to low man in there. Um, you know, it's not I think pretty early you'll figure out if it's for you or not. You know, um, because I do think that while to us it doesn't seem like that large of a jump, it requires a certain level of competency to do.
I
You know,
think
and
your
and
first jumps are the hardest, right? So it's like
yeah.
getting that first 3-man down. It's a lot early on. I mean, I remember like I'm trying to think of what one I got stuck on the longest. Um,
I
I
mean,
don't know. They're really
our I don't think we ever really got stuck because I know we did a lot of them together. Um, like I remember our flawless Goss. It didn't take that long, did it?
no, it didn't. I don't think so.
I mean, granted, I was like the AFK spot. It was sick.
Yeah, you
I had
slap an hour in and you were just
literally
chilling.
the easiest job. I was big chilling.
Like I
Um,
don't know. I think like early IP for me was like a little bit of a hard one to do, like 2-man. So that's just gonna be my example to use. But
oh, that's yeah.
like because
I'll
like
agree with
I
that.
kind of like for Galaran I kind of had like Slap had already done it a couple times when I did it with him. So before we kind of got our duo um thing on, I kind of already had a little bit of a easier time with it. But yeah, IP was like, and just balancing, juggling, making sure you have ammo. Like it was a lot for me to like really get under. And like there were days where it was just kind of like, it's like, damn man, like it's just, there's so much going on that I feel like I have to do.
Hmm.
Eventually that's kind of your thing that you need to get over, and once you're able to accomplish that and feel comfortable with that, a lot of the later steps are going to be easier, but those early ones are pretty difficult. My last thing I will kind of add, because you did make a good point about like, like finding the right people is tough. I totally understand that, and I sympathize with people who can't be as
Oh
fortunate
yeah.
as me and like find a good group as easily, because now requirements are so much higher than they once were. um when you do find a group, like this is before when you're just kind of like LFGing, you're using community server or something like that, I'd be very wary of getting carried in it. Try to be able to find 2 other people for your 3-mans where you guys are genuinely trying to work together, and it's not one person kind of dictating how things work and covering when people do things wrong, because you will not learn in that environment.
Yep.
And what your goal is to have some failure, because that will allow for you to have your internal growth. And like Vandal said like a little bit a while ago, about like being able to like swallow your pride, that is something you will learn through the failure of like getting over the hump.
And to touch on that a little bit, part of swallowing your pride is, like I say this like very seriously, okay? The earlier you can admit to your own mistakes and to things that you need to work on, the better. Okay? Because at the I say at the top here, but like Cruz would be the one to say at the top, but up here, I should say, um, you no one like talks great about the guy who knows how to point fingers. No one. You will will be essentially shooting yourself in the foot. The earlier you can be like, yeah, I kind of messed that one up. That one's on me. Like I messed up here. Just call it as it is, right? And if someone else messes up, you don't need to harp on them for it. You can just say, okay, now we know. You move on. That is to me that is a super important thing to develop early on, because that kind of mentality is like that kind of complete mentality is relatively rare once you get up here. Um, among like I don't know how to describe it, among everybody, right? We all have our own like little groups that we have faith and confidence in each other, but from group to group, that's not the same relationship, right? So if you can find that, you will find a group faster, and I truly believe that.
I think that's a good way to end it.
Yeah. So, leave a comment in the comments and let us know what you think, and kind of like if where you are, where
I was
what's your
literally about
journey
to say
like.
that. I think finding out where you guys are and like hearing from that, we can kind of respond to you, and like that would be really cool to hear where you guys feel like you are on this journey. Because at one point we were kind of everywhere. Like I feel like a lot of people don't understand that like top players at one point were bottom feeders. Like I literally played the game so casually at one point, and then I slowly worked my way up to the point where I was able to do these things.
Yeah, I mean, and like when Cruz messaged me, when we weren't some established clan, of like god players, we were barely getting our footing. There was only a handful of us that were even attempting things like this. Um, and even when Cruz joined, it didn't happen immediately either. You got to develop those kind of relationships. So, um, one thing that I did notice, and this is kind of a little tidbit, and I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, Cruz, but when you're LFGing, if you see someone say DM for invite, that's probably the quickest way to find a group, like a group that you could
Especially if
possibly
it
go back
goes
to.
well.
Yes,
You know,
you know,
you might
I've
find
slid a
some
couple
weirdos,
servers.
but there's some like I've had some good chats and like met a lot of people before. I have many LFG experiences from year one where I end up talking to people who were like top 100 raiders. And
Hmm.
it's like, maybe like through talking to them, I sort of absorbed some of their ideas and like kind of just how they played and things like that, what they thought about. So you'll learn a lot from being around people, and like you said, that's a pretty decent way just to find people. It's a little bit lucky, you do have to find the right
Oh yeah,
people, but
yeah, you can't avoid that.
you're just putting yourself out there, and the more you put yourself out there, the better the chance. I say, just make sure that if you do find weirdos, it's okay. It's just one experience. Try again. It's okay.
And again, a lot of it comes down to kind of how you are and kind of your almost like your character, um, in terms of finding a lasting group. Uh, you're probably going to run into people who are kind of hot shots, and you might be better than them. It's okay, you know. You let them do their thing. You don't have to sit here and prove anything to them. You don't see. I can't speak for everybody in the clan, but you don't see people in Elysium, most of us at least, going into LFGs and just blatantly just shitting on people or whatever, or, making them feel small, for our accomplishments, because what does that do? What purpose does that serve? It is nothing. It's only negative there, right? On us and on them. Everybody's learning, and we understand that. Like Cruz said, we were all beginners at one point, all of us, and we recognize that not everybody's up there yet, and that's okay. They'll get there, and if they want help, we'll help, and if they don't want help, perfectly fine too. So, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
agree.
that's a good point. That's a good point to wrap it up.
We'll
Like,
sit there. I don't really have anything else to say about like how
yeah.
to get better or anything like that. So you've run me dry of my wisdom.
um, but yeah, seriously, leave a comment. Get at us on Twitter. You know, and talk to us. We want your feedback. We want to hear where you guys are, and we want to engage. So
Yep.
everything's in the description, by the way, all the links.
I will do my due diligence and put them there. But that is
And
it. Thank you all for listening, watching, whatever you do. Listen while you play Destiny or another game. Appreciate it. Thank you for liking and sharing. We'll see you probably next week. What do we think? Do you think? I mean, we only got 2 weeks left till the next season, so I think we will. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we're praying for something about next season. That's what we're doing.
yeah, I mean,
That would be
next
good.
week, yeah, I think. Oh, this TWAB, did they say if it's going to be a juicy one or no?
I don't think so.
We're only getting one more TWAB before the next season, I think, right? Or two more?
Yeah, we get one more, and then we get one that following week,
Uh-huh.
and then 2 weeks after that, and then we're done. We got 3 more.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I guess, yeah, we'll have an episode next week. And
we'll be there next week.
if you guys leave comments and stuff, we'll directly reply in the next episode.
So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I already said that, but that's part of the closeout. We'll see you next week for the next episode of the Destiny Dugout. Bye, guys.
Thanks for being here.